Good afternoon. I'm Barbara Tinnerman Cecil, and on behalf of Susie Spittler and Tom Beck, I want to welcome you to the 25th Oral History Taping. It is Tuesday, April 8th, 2014, and during this spring series, we will hear about West Milton and the surrounding area churches. Our first speaker is Norman Paulus, who will tell us about Hoffman Memorial Methodist Church. Norman.
Okay. Yes, I am Norman Paulus, and I attend the United Methodist Church, Hoffman United Methodist Church here in West Milton, and I think, quite active in it. Sometimes maybe some people question that because I won't do some things that maybe they want me to do. But anyway, I'm quite busy with the church, and I'm glad to be a Christian, and I'm glad to be a member of the Hoffman United Methodist Church. I'm going to refer to a history book that was just made back in 2010. It was our 175th anniversary of having the Hoffman Church here in West Milton. So it was in 1853, well, no, I better get back to my regular notes. In 1835, the first church in West Milton was erected by Methodists, and the Quaker Church was pretty close to that, but I think we were still the first one. The official name was Methodist Episcopal Church. It was a small 36 by 40 cabin-type structure made of hand-hewn logs. Its location was west of the present church, on what is now part of the front lawn of the recently demolished Milton Union High School. The official name was Methodist Episcopal Church. It was built in the same location as the first. Now, this is the second church. Oh, I didn't tell you that they already, well, maybe I should back up. After they demolished, after I was telling you, demolished Milton Union High School, that's where our church, that grass area in front of that school was where the first church was. And after a time when this first church was no longer used or needed, a second Methodist church was erected. The official name was Methodist Episcopal Church again. It was built in the same location as the first. Both buildings fronted on Jefferson Street, which was planned to be one of the main thoroughfares in town. Well, the plans were that way, but that isn't the main thoroughfare there on Jefferson Street. The church was heated with 2 potbelly stoves and lighted by either kerosene or coal oil lamps. In approximately 1903, after about 50 years of use, the church became badly in need of repairs. It is told that the roof leaked so badly that when it rained, the congregation sat with umbrellas over their heads. Thus, it was decided that a new church should be built. Well, pretty good decision, wasn't it? Until construction was completed, the congregation met in the local Friends Church meeting house on Sunday afternoons. On February 28, 1909, the third and the present church was dedicated. Its official name was Hoffman Memorial Methodist Episcopal Church. The church was named in memory of Enoch Hoffman, the leading member of the Methodists during the period when the first 2 buildings were in use. Some interesting facts about this church were the lot was purchased for $1,000. The first cost of this third church was approximately $8,000. The pastor's salary at the time was $400. I want you all to hear that. Okay. The average church school attendance was 80 persons per Sunday, and the average total offerings was $2. Even at $2, that I don't know where they ever got $400 to pay but these are figures that somebody has verified them from years ago, I guess. The beautiful stained glass windows were gifts of classes, and some or all have been restored too, by the way. But they were gifts of classes, individual donors whose names are lettered on the windows. The organ in the church was a combination reed and pipe organ, And the first lights were either gas lights or acetylene calcium carbide. One of the main features of the interior decorations was a bright red carpet. And I don't remember that bright red carpet, but when I joined the church or started going to that church in 1958, I guess it was, it did have red carpet in that time yet, but I don't think that was the first. Well, I'm sure it wasn't the first red carpet, though. There is limited information on our early church parsonages. We do not know that one parsonage. We do know that one parsonage was on 150 Front Street. It was a purchased frame house. Another parsonage at 19 Norris Drive was a red brick house. And we purchased that in 1981, I think. And the lot next door to our current church was purchased in 1985 from Ray Wackler, an auto mechanic. Later, the house was torn down to make way for the third and current parsonage and new garage. That was in 1998. The original garage remains and serves as the church storeroom. In 1968, the Methodist Church merged nationally with the Evangelical United Brethren Church. From that time on, our church has been known as the Hoffman United Methodist Church. Maybe you remember that when that happened, and that brought into the Methodist Church the United Brethren Church in Potsdam, which we are sharing one of our pastors with the United Methodist Church in Potsdam now. Through the years, many facilities and property improvements were made. 1949, renovation of the basement, new kitchen equipment, new gas furnace, and decoration of the walls and floors. That new gas furnaces, that floor furnace was right down the aisle of the church when we started going there. Well, it was there for years. And then in 58, the remodeling of the chancel was done. I think that's when that furnace was finally taken out. Also in this, no, that's not right either, because we were married in 59, and it was still there, because I told the best man, don't drop my ring down that register. So it must have been in 61. Anyway, 1958, remodeling of the chancel was done. Also in this year, the church acquired property adjoining to the south. And a lot of people will remember that. That was Bob Leese's, where I don't think he owned the place, but he lived there, and he had the garage behind there and had that radio repair shop there. Anyway, we bought that and tore that house down then. So in 1961, groundbreaking ceremonies for the new $60,000 educational wing took place. Then in 69, consecrated its new educational unit and dedicated the newly remodeled sanctuary, including pews and carpets. That was in 69, and that was probably the first sound system that was put in our church. I remember that sound system. Harold Baker put it in, and it was a good one. But we've since changed it too. In 1985, the church purchased, I thought I just read that, the Wackler property on 141 South Main Street. Now, air conditioning was added to the sanctuary in 1991. Handbells were purchased in 92, updating the education wing in 99, and in 2000, a sound system, modern sound system was purchased. In fact, I guess my wife and I, took some of her mother's money and paid for some of that sound system in memory of her. 2002, a groundbreaking ceremony was held for the new $460,000 activity center. And then it happened that was when the air show was over there, and they flew over at the air show planes flew over at the church as we were doing this congregational ceremony here. 2003, the new Activity Center addition was consecrated. The new addition includes a large multiple-purpose room, restrooms, classrooms, and a new kitchen, which presently is the home of Grandma's Kitchen. Activities in the Activity Center have included the quilt show, art show, Legacy 5 concerts, and I think we had another quartet in there besides that, and craft show, kids choir, lunch bunch, basketball, volleyball, practices for young spirits, and school functions, church classes, parties, and receptions, etc. So the activity center that we built is very much used and has been a real good thing for our church. For many years, the ladies of our church have served homemade pot pie dinners on Election Day. I'm sure the community knows about that. And in the early 1930s, the Election Day meal was served at the church from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. at a cost of 35 cents. Well, you can't hardly get in the door now for that, you know. The good news, the Methodist women are still making pot pie for the Election Day dinners. Well, the men did it one time, and I think that was the only time. It didn't turn out too well. Our church Sunday school consists of elementary classes, which have always held high importance, adult classes, which consists of the Future Seekers class, the Audubon class, the Current Events class, the Crosswords class, and some group studies on a variety of topics that fill the weekly, monthly, and yearly calendars. The average church school attendance, no, I read that, didn't I? Was 80 person. I already read that. Yeah, I'm on the last page. Okay, now I'll switch over to my booklet here. Some of the new programs that has been added to our church too, besides the worship services, we used to have 2 services every Sunday, but it was really all traditional. That was in the 80s, and then for some reason we stopped that and didn't have 2 services. And then, of course, what was pushing us was contemporary services, and that was tried with one of our pastors, and it didn't. We tried it in our activity center, and it just wasn't conducive to worship settings. Really, I guess, and not many people came, so that was discontinued until now 2 years ago, and we started up again, and it's doing well now. Well, another thing, back in 1987, we did buy a new organ. It cost us $20,000, and that was a good thing. We're still using it. And then, of course, all churches, most churches are in Christian education. Now, there's a lot of churches that don't even have Sunday school, I guess, nowadays, but back in the early days, it used to be called a Sabbath school. The Sunday school was a Sabbath school, and I didn't know that until now. And then later, they were called church schools. And now, we don't even really call it Sunday school now. I guess it's just a Sunday school class. It is Sunday school classes, though, where they do teach different topics. My class that I teach, we use the International Sunday School lessons, but all the classes don't use that. And then we did have junior church back in '73, but we haven't had junior church now for a while. But anyway, they had elementary classes, Future Seeker class, the Audubon class. Does anybody know what Audubon means? It's a French word for ever upward and onward. And that was begun back in 1931, I guess, with that title. And the current events class, now that's Susie Spittler's class. And then small group studies. And then, of course, we have membership, leadership classes run by the pastors and on that way. But other outreaches was Mountain Hoffman United Methodist Church does like their music too. And I didn't really know this much about this, but music has long been the hallmark of the Methodist Church, which I knew that. And early April 3rd, 1938, church bulletin shows a choir was already in place. The 1977 history book states that Hoffman had an orchestra in the 1930s, which is verified, so forth. And then in the junior choir and orchestra rehearsal announcement in November 20, 1938 church bulletin. They were instructed to meet at the home of Maurice Kessler. And it goes on there. And then they had senior choir. In 1979, I don't know if anybody remembers, but Passion Play we had a pastor that had a passion for passion plays. And we did that several years, I forget now how. Then we had cherub choir. And many of the Norman Heister is our choir leader now. He had been for 10 years, and then he was gone for a while from the choir. Now he's back, and I think he's got 16 years as being our choir director. So we appreciate him. Well, I guess my time is up, pretty near. But I would like to read our United Methodist Church mission statement before I quit, and it's to make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. And that is the United Methodist mission statement. Usually we have a mission statement from each pastor, but they're working on one of those for our church to go along with this mission statement of the conference church. And then I did want to read what the Theda Kleppinger wrote this at the end of this book. It's called a postscript. The earned seems so simple. A number of years ago, having walked downtown to purchase groceries for my parents, I started the return walk to Locust Lane, nearing Hoffman Church. I felt the need to stop and rest on the front steps. The 2 bags of groceries proved to be quite heavy. After a few minutes of resting, I completed the walk home. Little did I know at that point that later in my life, Hoffman Church would again provide me with rest, although this time as a member of Hoffman, it is a spiritual rest. This experience reminds me of Jesus' words in Matthew 11:28. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. And I thought that sure sums up what a church should be, partly of what church should be. And here's a picture that I did bring out of the church here that shows our church, the first church there that was built, and then to the last one. There was only really 3 churches, buildings that this had. Okay, thank you, and I'm going to turn it to our next guest speaker.
Hello, my name's Chris Horn. I'm the pastor of the West Milton Baptist Church. Certainly thankful to be here today. Thankful to those that put this program together and give us the opportunity to come and deliver the histories of our churches and share a little bit about them with the communities. One thing I find to be true about the churches in town, you talk to people about them, and a lot of times they don't know their names, but I passed by that church, or I go to eat over there at the Chinese place, or whatever the case is. So it's good for us to be able to tell the community a little bit more about our churches and their history relative to the town, and certainly how we got here and things. I've been the pastor of the West Milton Baptist Church since 2009, and it has been a blessed time of the Lord. We're thankful for it. God really began to plant the seeds for the West Milton Baptist Church in the spring of 1956. He laid it on the heart of Emmanuel Baptist Church in Dayton, Ohio, to begin a outreach ministry of sorts into the West Milton area. It began as a street preaching venture, basically is what we understand, and there was a response to that, which is very interesting in light of today's climate and overall reception of the gospel and preaching. It's really hard to get anybody to talk to you, even when you knock on their doors, meet them on the street, anything like that. But they were able to come up into town and begin street preaching in various locations, and quickly the Lord blessed, and soon a mission was established where they got a handful of people that were believing in the Lord Jesus Christ for salvation, and were very interested in what they believed, what they taught, wanted to learn more. The group began meeting in homes. They had no immediate place to call their own, so to speak, but they began meeting in homes of those people that had joined the mission, if you will, and really began serving the Lord that way every Lord's Day for a while. By November of that year, the Lord had blessed to such a degree that there was enough of a group of people that had shown a commitment unto the Lord and unto the work here in West Milton that on the 25th of that month, the Emmanuel Baptist Church from Dayton, Ohio, authorized the group of people assembled there to organize themselves into a New Testament Baptist church, which they did November 25th, 1956. So it is to that date that we trace our history, so to speak, in town. It has been nearly 58 years now, and that is a wonderful thing to think about. It became known as the West Milton Baptist Church. It has remained under that name since that time, and has been in its present location since then as well. And looking back to the beginnings of the church, it really is evidence that the hand of the Lord was on them because of how it got started, like we said, through the street preaching and being receptive, or the community being receptive of those that came and preached and labored in the Word. The Lord blessed, and He allowed that to spring into life in November of 1956. After being organized in that year, the newly formed church continued to meet in homes or in rented rooms until 1959. One thing that people get mixed up or whatever on is they think a church, they think of a building. And oftentimes we use the two interchangeably. But when the church began in 1956, it still had no place to meet. It had no building to call its own. They still continued in homes of members, home of the pastor, and continued on like that. They rented some rooms when available, and the money, they had the funds to do so. They did that for a couple of years, but it was in the year of 1959 that the church purchased the property at 1070 South Miami Street. So it was 3 years they continued to meet in homes and those kinds of things. And that's still where our present location is, at the corner of 48 and North Williams Drive. Sunoco wasn't there back then, but it is now. And the Chinese across the street car wash, that's how the landmarks, at least I tell people to look for, because if you just say the Baptist church in town, a lot of people don't realize it because they drive by. But that's where we are. That's where we've been. They purchased that property from Scott and LCJ for the sum of $1 and other valuable considerations, is how the mortgage deed read that I came across. So that was kind of interesting. Ground was broke that year to erect a building, and was finished in November of the same year in time for the church's third anniversary. So the church finally had a building and a regular meeting house to have a face for the community to see and interact with and come to church or services at. 4 years later, in 1963, the property located behind the church's property was acquired with the intent of building a parsonage on, which in later years was purchased. It was bought from a company by the name of Lar Wilk Homes, someone I've never heard of, but that was the name anyhow. And the church contracted with him to build the home on the property. And it has served as a parsonage since its completion sometime in the late 60s. And that has been a real blessing to be able to have for that. I've got an article here from the newspaper dated January 27th, 1960. The headline reads, "New Church Replaces Home Worship." It says, "Members of the West Milton Baptist Church no longer have to meet in their minister's home for worship. This building, finished about 3 months ago, was constructed to hold about 120 persons in its auditorium and has 5 classrooms located in a residential district on South Miami Street. It is designed for adaptation into a parsonage if a larger worship building is constructed later. Before the $25,000 building was completed, members of the church met for services in the homes of their minister, the Reverend Burley Combs. He was the second pastor of the church. The original design of the church's meeting house was a T-shaped structure that housed a sanctuary and a few Sunday school rooms. If he can push in on this, we got a picture here. I don't know if that can... There we go. That was the original construction of the building, that T-shape. If you look hard when you go by, you can still see that structure, at least the roof line. It is still there. In 1971, the church was able to put on an addition, rather large addition on the south side to accommodate a fellowship hall and some more Sunday school rooms. And then on the northwest corner, where this T was, to accommodate some office space, and also more Sunday school rooms. So that was seen. And as you drive by the building, you can see the pitched roof part of the building is the old structure. And as you look, you find the new structure that was done in 71 is all flat roof. So you can tell a definite difference in the two and kind of see the evolution of the building of the church in that way. That configuration has served the church well for the last 43 years, and really haven't had any other major additions or renovations to the outside of the building. But we have done much to the inside, and it has been a wonderful place to meet with the Lord each and every week that we have come together. Seen a lot of changes over the years in the surrounding area. Like we said, Sunoco was built. I remember when it was built, but I don't have the date in front of me. All of the newer homes down Williams Drive have been constructed in the last 15 years. And so it has seen some things coming up around it, but yet the building has remained there in a pretty good location to serve the community. And we're thankful for the building God's provided for the worship of the church. Now, all of these items have really been in reference to the church building. But the church itself is the people that the Lord saves by His grace and then adds by baptism into the body. And as we reflect on the church proper, it's never been a large assembly. I would doubt that it has been larger than 50 members ever in its time. If it has, it wouldn't have been much more. But as you look back and consider, even though it has never been large in number or attracted big crowds, the church has always stuck by the truth. It identified what it believed. In 1956, I read over some documents of the incorporation papers and those kinds of things you have to send to the government and all of that. And one thing that is wonderful about our church is that we still believe and practice those things that they identified back then. There hasn't been any changes as far as that is concerned. Church has always stuck by the truth of Scripture, being able to echo that statement of faith. We're thankful for that. Every February and June, the church holds special services, extended times of preaching, and those sorts of things. Our Bible conference in June, we have 3 days of preaching, and we're thankful for that. A revival at least every October. Maintain a website, it's wmbchurch.com, to interact with the community. Also, we do our best to maintain a video outreach where we air our broadcast of our services in the community and around surrounding communities. And so we're as active as the Lord leads us to be, and we're thankful for that. And we do continue to strive in those areas. You know, the church may never capture the attention of the world, but it has had the attention, the love, and the care of Christ for these last 58 years. And I wouldn't change any of that, trade it in for the big meeting halls or all those other things that are attended by a lot of modern religion today. Times have changed, technology's advanced, morality has declined, but the church remains devoted to serving the Lord by being the pillar and ground of the truth that is spoken of by Paul in 1 Timothy 3:15. This November we'll celebrate our 58th year, but in truth, the history of our church goes far back beyond 1956 when we were organized. In truth, we believe it goes back all the way to the time of Christ. And since that time, and since he established the first church there in Jerusalem, we believe that it has extended down through history till even now in a chain link succession. Church at Jerusalem started other churches, Antioch and other places. Those churches started other churches of like faith and order as Christ had set them in the world. And that has continued, we believe, even until this time. You can trace the history of the Lord's churches all throughout that area of the world as they began, even up through England and Holland into the 1600s. You can do that by various sources of history, read those things. But we have records of our heritage back to the First Baptist Church in America, Newport, Rhode Island, where it was established. From there, we can trace ourselves up through New York and other areas to the First Baptist Church in Ohio in 1790. It was established even before Ohio was a state in the area of Cincinnati before statehood. And then on from there to the First Baptist Church in Dayton, which was established in 1824, which leads us up to Emmanuel Baptist Church in 1912. That's a condensed form of our history, which we have a little chart here to show too. I'll try to hold it up here and let him zoom in on it. But it also gives that lineage that we have just mentioned and talked about back to that First Baptist Church in Rhode Island in 1638. So that's just a little condensed history of that. We're thankful for that. I believe the Lord is blessed in bringing us into existence and giving us the ability to serve the Lord. Personally with the church, as I said, I've been here since 2009, but my personal history with the church goes all the way back to about 85 when my grandma and my aunt brought me to the West Milton Baptist Church for the first time when I was 7 years old. I grew up in the church, learned the truth, was saved, baptized in the church. My wife also was in the church. Her dad pastored the West Milton Baptist Church from 1985 till 2001. The Lord called me to preach personally in 1998. We left for a period of about 8 or 9 years to pastor other churches in other places, and then in 2009 accepted the will of the Lord and the call of the church to come back and pastor the church. So we're thankful to be in the community, and again, thankful for this time. We'd just like to invite anyone to come and be with us. Services on Sunday are 10:30 in the morning for worship, and of course 7 o'clock in the evening. And as I said, you can check out our website to learn more about us and all those things. So thank you, and on to our next speaker now.
Thank you. I'm Pastor John Johansson, the pastor emeritus of Good Shepherd Lutheran Church, and again, we identify by being what was called B&B. It's now the IGA in the South Miami Street. And actually in 1958, there was a survey done in our area, West Milton, Union Township, and also in the Englewood area, and 2 churches came out of that survey. It was a time of growth, much more than it is now. It's much harder to attract people than it was in the 50s. But Holy Trinity Lutheran on Route 40 was established about the same time as Good Shepherd West Milton. And that church has stopped functioning at this point, has not made it. But Good Shepherd has reached their 55th year, really. This is a 50th anniversary book from 1959 to 2009. And we have this book because Barb Cecil helped work on the committee to do that. Another one of our charter members invited today was Rita Stitz, and I hope that she would be able to be here. Worked on our celebration of our 50 years. It's already 2014, and that means it's 55 years, so time goes so quickly, and things change a lot over the years. The other living charter members include Nancy Klipstein and Louise Johnston. They did organize, I think, with about 80. We've, over the years, at several times, averaged over 100 persons that worship during the year, and we're a little lower than that right now. We've gone through some recent changes, as many churches have. With this booklet that Barbara helped work on, and Pastor Craig Foreman, a son of the congregation, Alice and Shirley were the parents, and he is a pastor of one of the 3 largest churches in Dayton now, at Abiding Christ Lutheran in Fairborn, and they helped put our anniversary booklet together and a lot of other good things for that celebration. Each decade is described in this book, not only the history of the church, but a page, and I just want to read the first sentence of the 60s, which was the beginning life of the church, was years of space exploration, of hippies, of Vietnam and Camelot, the Apollo 7 astronauts, Neil Armstrong walked on the moon, and time of President John or Jack Kennedy and Jackie as his wife, and Carolyn and John. So the 50 years have gone very quickly, and there's been a lot of changes in the local congregation as well as in the national church. I want to stress that Craig is a product of our congregation, Pastor Craig, and also a young lady in recent years is Whitney Barth, daughter of Jeff and Jody Barth, and she is now working. She went through and got her Master of Divinity degree at Harvard, got her bachelor's degree in Miami University, but she is now working on a pluralism project at Harvard University as the assistant director. She decided not to go into the pastoral ministry, but she did consider that for a while, and now is working on this world religions information project at Harvard University. Maybe she'll come back to Ohio someday and share some of her talent and gifts. She does return to worship with her family from time to time. We've had a number of preachers over the years that were called after the organization in 1959. We were part then of the United Lutheran Church in America, and after that the national churches evolved into the Lutheran Church in America, LCA, and now we're presently part of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, ELCA. We have nationally and locally had some good and bad years, as I've suggested, and we're looking for good years in the future. We now have an interim, a retired pastor, much like myself, and Dick Faust from West Carrollton comes up and serves 1 day a week and does special services and other needs as required. Good Shepherd first met in the American Legion Hall on South Miami Street, back of Magel's Ice Cream. And the official organization was, as I said, in 1959, as this book commemorates. And they began with men's and women's groups and a youth group. And Sunday school was offered from the beginning and has been all these 55 years. Vacation school has been popular, and particularly after the building of the housing units back on Sandler. We've tried to reach out to them. We joined the Milton Union Council of Churches soon after organization in '59, and have been very active in many of those projects, Helping Hammers, Young Spirits. Rita Stitz, one of our charter members, started the preschool or nursery school. Now it's called a preschool. It's existed 40 years. They celebrated their 40th anniversary this year, and have a board from our church that supervises that and keeps it up to standards, and has been popular and a good reputation. I did mention Young Spirits. A lot of our members have served on their board, as well as a lot of our youth have participated in that group. In 1976, the bicentennial year, they started Oktoberfest for 9 years, and some of you may remember that. It was kind of a community celebration in the back lot, and had lots of community involvement as well as congregational effort and work. One of our prominent members is Marcia Fishbach, who has done the choir for many years and offers a Christmas program each Christmas. She also helped organize the West Milton Players, I think, during the time of Pastor Dale Truscott, and they did several productions at Good Shepherd and have done several over the years in other venues. But at the present time, I think they're also looking for leadership and support. The women have participated in the annual Friendship Bazaar at various times throughout our history, and have celebrated several anniversaries. In terms of the building, I came to West Milton in 1989 at the end of the year, and it was a flat roof building with just one unit called a first unit. Soon after that, we were able to put a gable roof on, which was required because of the rain and leaking problems. Earlier than that, before I came, they'd put in, had a lot of glass in what they used as a sanctuary, and they had those insulated and boarded up to save on heating costs. As many churches, they've struggled financially sometimes. At the present time, that doesn't seem to be a problem, except that it may be if they call a full-time pastor. The salaries of clergy continue to rise, and the benefits of insurance. And hopefully they'll be, in this year, looking to call committee to develop a relationship with a full-time clergy. As you mentioned about Hoffman, the handbell program has been very successful and has continued since the handbells were first introduced. Many of you have heard about Thrivent, which was a Lutheran financial organization. They have provided a lot of money to projects, the Lunch Bunch group that Hoffman does and Good Shepherd does, and to the fish program, the food program, and to the Helping Hammers. I think they've added gifts to that. They still have an office. They're a 500 company, but they have an office in Piqua, and their agent serves our people and our community as well. We've had people help with the Gingham's Clothesline in Tip City. A lot of workers go at least once or twice. They go down to First Lutheran Church in Dayton and serve a meal on Sunday mornings to 150 people that are in need of food and homeless or near homeless. As I mentioned, the gable roof, they did then dedicate a new sanctuary in the year 2000, and it's already 14 years old. So it's not really the new sanctuary, but it was certainly a welcome addition when it was built. We've supported Relay for Life, Habitat for Humanity, and other projects. The Sunday school monies have often gone for Dr. Renee Moat from Laura, who served in Africa, I believe, and Relay for Indian Mission in Arizona, I think they are now, that gets our help. We've had sports teams in softball and volleyball over the years, and I think one of the greatest things in recent years after I retired, they have had a significant lay ministry involvement in the worship. I started seminary the same year that Good Shepherd was organized. And in '62, when the building was built, that was my first call to churches in Nebraska, but I ended up in West Milton and have enjoyed my time, and we've retired and enjoyed our retirement time here. We now have one of the strengths of the congregation is a seniors ministry. We have about 20 people that gather once a month, and they're about to have a spring fling inviting all the retirees of the community and the township to afternoon fellowship and music. And as I mentioned, Marcia Fishbach, she did not only the Milton Players, but has also been involved in the community with the plays and done a lot of music for a lot of people. I think this probably concludes all that I have to say, and I'd like to pass it on now to our next speaker.
Hello, I'm Dick Martins, retired Quaker pastor and former pastor of West Milton Friends Meeting. It's my privilege to share with you some of the history of the Religious Society of Friends, Quakers, in Miami County, Union Township, West Milton. If you go back to the Northwest Ordinance of 1787, this marked the beginning of migration of Friends, Quakers from North Carolina, from Pennsylvania, from Maryland, from Virginia, and Georgia into the area that was to be known as the state of Ohio. Quakers, the Religious Society of Friends, came to the United States shortly after the church was founded by George Fox in 1647. Many of those friends came over as farmers, tradesmen, artisans. Many of them also owned slaves. As the Friends became concerned about the human treatment of these servants, they became convinced that slavery was a unnecessary evil, and that they became convinced that they should set their slaves free, often giving them land or money, and convincing their neighbors to do the same thing, which made them very unpopular in the South. When the Northwest Territory was opened, they began migrating from the South into the area that had been opened up and which would become the state of Ohio. About 1,800 folks from North Carolina migrated shortly before the end of the 18th century. And so that they came to the area of the Great Miami River, which we now know as the Stillwater, and on the West Branch began to meet for worship in the cabin home of Caleb Mendenhall. In 1804, which predates the organizing of West Milton as a village, their first building constructed for the sole purpose of religious meetings was constructed in the area of Frederick Garland Road and J Road. If you drive on Frederick Garland westward towards J, you can see that there is a log cabin structure, which is a reconstruction of that first meeting house that Friends had in Union Township. From there, they built a larger building in 1807. In 1818, a brick building was constructed, and that building stood until about 1943. It had not been occupied for many years. In 1903, the building had been sold to a private individual He had various uses of it on his farm, hog barn, cattle barn, granary, and it, over the years, began to deteriorate. And so in 1943, the building was torn down. The bricks from the building were used to construct the wall that now stands around the Friends Cemetery on that location of the original meetings. As the area developed, there were additional Friends churches that were established. One was on Shiloh Road, just off of Fenner Road. This was the Lick Branch monthly meeting. Another was a union meeting north of the falls on Ludlow Creek in the present community of Ludlow Falls. There was also a meeting called Mill Creek, which was established and faded away over the time. In 1844, an anti-slavery Friends meeting was organized in Laura. And one of two conservative or old order Friends built a church in 1889 known as the Laura meeting, which existed until 1947. Of all those names mentioned, there are only two which still meet as Friends meetings for regular worship service. That would be Center Friends, which was organized in 1864 when a group of friends living near the intersection of the State Road to Greenville and Markley Road requested of West Branch and Union monthly meetings the privilege of holding a meeting for worship and preparative amongst ourselves to be known by the name of Center. So a little white frame meeting house was constructed in 1866. And even though we, among Friends and people in the community, know it as Center Friends Church, it conducts all of its official business and correspondence as West Branch Monthly Meeting, which would be a direct descendant, continuation of the name of the original Quaker meeting, which began meeting in 1804. The original building at Center was just a little east of the present building. It was approximately 30 feet in width and length and held about 12 to 14 rows of pews. Now, most of the Quaker meeting houses in the early days were divided, separated down the center by a wall. Men and boys met on one side of the meeting house, girls and women met on the other side. And during business meetings, if communication was necessary between the men's group and the women's group, a messenger would be sent from one side of the building to the other side to convey that message. And when the building was remodeled, you could still see where the marks had been, where the wall stood down the center of that building. In that building and during the early days, Quakers were very concerned about appearing worldly. That is, appearing to be much like the rest of society and culture. They had a distinct set of beliefs. We had a distinct language that we spoke among ourselves. Perhaps you've heard of thee and thou. I would ask friend Roger Swaggart, who's sitting here, friend, hast thee had a Quaker oats today? And of course, Roger would respond in the plain English. We also have unusual terms that we use when we conduct our business meetings. We do not have a president. We have a clerk. We have a recorder. We don't have a secretary to record the minutes of our meetings. And there are other terms that we often use that perhaps confuse people. Norman referred to Sabbath day school among the Methodists. We as Friends referred to those as first day schools. We refrained in the early days from using the proper names of the days of the week or the months of the year. January was first month, February was second month, and similar ways. And among the conservative Friends, they still use many of these terms in conversations among themselves. In the 1930s, Center remodeled their building, or rather decided to build a new building, and Harry Mote was hired as building contractor because many of the members of Center Friends were farmers. There was no lack of volunteer labor. Lee Hissong with his team of horses and John Markley with his mules came with slip scoops. You young gentlemen would not know what a slip scoop was, but all of the old timers would know the use of a slip scoop to dig a basement or prepare a foundation. In 1948, the first parsonage at Center was completed. That was built by Wilbur Beatley, who also gave the ground for the parsonage to build on. Over the years, attendance continued to increase. In 1951, I believe they began construction of a new building, and that was completed in February of 1952. At this time, the Sunday school attendance at Center was running at 160 to 180 people. But they are humble enough to say that the Sunday school attendance usually was larger than the church worship service attendance. In 1964, the historic groundbreaking ceremony took place. This was on the 100th anniversary of the construction of the original Center Friends meeting. They had a dedication service in August of 1965, and the construction of the present Friends Church at Center cost $110,000 for a brand new building. Names that would be familiar of early members, charter members of Center Friends would be Thomas, Coate, Pearson, Pemberton, Davis, and Elliman. The present pastor at Center Friends is Dwayne Cox and his wife Pam, and the official attendance on Sunday morning reported to the yearly meeting or the annual conference is 40. The minutes of West Branch meeting held 5th month, 14th, 1874 carried this paragraph. Friends residing in the village of Milton, Union Township, request that a meeting be established in that place to be held on the first day at 11 o'clock and on 5th day evenings, to be known by the same name as the town, Milton. In the 2nd month of 1881, a proposition was introduced to West Branch monthly meeting that funds lying idle in the treasury from the sale of real estate, that is, houses and the lots of discontinued meetings, be used to purchase 2 lots in West Milton for a site for a new meeting house. We do not know for sure where Friends were meeting during the time of construction, but Mrs. Altavor Pemberton distinctly remembers that as a child, she attended Methodist Sunday school and church on Sunday morning, then went to Friends Bible School and first day meeting in the afternoon both being held in the Methodist Church. So Norman and the rest of the members at Hoffman Methodist, we owe you a debt of thanks for letting us use your building while the West Milton building was constructed. But then, as you mentioned, we returned the favor in 1908 by permitting the Methodists to use the West Milton Friends church building. So a deed for lots number 83 and 90 on North Main Street were presented at fourth month meeting, on which a new brick meeting house was to be erected, the lots having been purchased from David Coate and wife Mary Teague Coate. Now, there's some disagreement among Quaker historians on this point. Some say that the property was purchased. Others say that the property was given to the meeting by the Coates. I have no way of knowing exactly what is the plain truth. The Coates also, though, in a moment of generosity, gave the first organ to West Milton Church. And this was probably the first in any Quaker meeting. The building project was directed to the care of trustees Linus Smote and David Elemonth. The building was finished in the 9th month of 1881. And even though it's just a simple, plain brick structure, it became the attention worldwide of friends because it has a steeple with a bell in it, which is quite unknown among friends at the time. It was so notorious that two representatives from London Yearly Meeting of Friends came to the United States, to West Milton, to counsel West Milton friends about their deviation from Friends Society practice. Apparently it didn't have any effect. The steeple's still there. The bell doesn't ring anymore, but the steeple is still there. And there is an interesting story that at some point after electricity was put into the church, one of the pastors got the idea that it would be nice to have the tower lighted. So they began turning the lights on at dusk. And in the days before jets, it was reported that pilots would fly over West Milton, look for the lighted steeple tower, put down their flaps, and lower the wheels in their approach to the Dayton airport. At one time, for some reason, the lights went out. And the pilots coming into Dayton radioed the tower, "Where are the lights at West Milton? We don't know when to put down our flaps and when to put down our wheels." So the problem was quickly corrected. In 1882, the village council passed an ordinance for sidewalks, and the monthly meeting in June paid a bill of $24.45 for the walk in front of the meeting house. This was not a concrete walk. It was sandstone slabs fitted together. And in reading Juanita Kleppinger's history of West Milton Friends, she said that she and her husband had two of those slabs in their home after the concrete walks were put in. There was a request from West Branch monthly meeting for the establishment of an independent meeting in West Milton in 1882. They decided the time was not right, and so West Milton continued to meet with the center as part of center meeting until 1929 or 1930, when the church finally became independent of West Branch. A basement was put into or under the church in 1924 because there was not space in the crawl space for a new furnace. So H.M. Ellerman, William Harshberger, W.A. Ellerman, and Harold Kleppinger brought their teams, picks, shovels, slip scoops, and dug until they hit solid rock. So we know that West Milton Friends is built on solid rock. In 1962, the parsonage was moved from the north side of the church to the west side. An educational building was erected, and for a time, that educational building was used as a community daycare center to utilize to the fullest the church building. Among friends, Irby friends, it was common that pastors were not paid, that they served as called to ministry outside of their daily living, and so they served free of charge. Friends were also among the first to permit women to serve as full-time pastors of many meetings. And in the history that Juanita Kleppinger wrote, she says, "We cannot claim any great increase in membership in comparison with the original one or in comparison with the increase in village population. We have had our low days, very low. At one time so low it seemed we might have to close our doors, like the parent church, West Branch. But under conviction, some woman stepped forward and she agreed to pay the pastor's salary herself until enough funds were raised to do it as a congregation. Family names or charter members or early members were Pearson, Crew, Elliman, Harshbarger, Jones, Pemberton, Carroll, Coate, Coppick, Kleppinger, Hissong, Markley, and Shatley. At the present time, the attendance at West Milton Friends is down to 16. And so they are once again experiencing low days. But God will have his way, and if it's his will, they will remain open and functioning as a Friends meeting, or they will close their door because it's his decision. The information that I shared with you, I gleaned from writings by Arlene Clifton, by Greg Hanshaw, who is the official historian of Indiana Yearly Meeting of Friends, which is our annual conference, Juanita Kleppinger, Roger Swaggart, friend Roger, who is here today, and I want to thank Karen J. for opening the Quaker Research Center for me to have access to the information they have there. It's been a privilege for me to share with the three other gentlemen today in the history and story of churches in West Milton. I do believe that God has blessed the churches of West Milton and Union Township. I believe that we are a strong testimony to God's presence in our midst. Thank you. I do have some items.
You mentioned Wilbur Beaton building the parsonage there for the church. I didn't even know that, but he built the church too, didn't he?
Yes. Yes, he did. I have a picture here of the current church building at Center. One of the things I really like about this building is they have a cemetery in their front yard, and if no one else shows up for a meeting on Sunday, at least there are a few folks present.
But that was there way before the first church.
From the program of the Quaker Heritage Festival, you see a drawing of the first Quaker meeting house in Union Township. This is the original West Branch meeting. And this is the picture of the West Milton Friends Meeting House circa 1910, 1920. And you can see that the parsonage is located on the north side of the building, where now it is on the west side. And the last thing I would like to show to you, the accepted headdress of Quaker ladies for many years. You can see it's quite plain, which is fitting the plain dress that the Quakers were known for. I'm not sure, but this may be a Methodist or a Baptist or perhaps a Lutheran lady's headdress of the same period. At a period of time, Friends were quite strict in their form of dress. We refer to it as plain dress, and you can see this little Quaker lady in an advertisement for the original Quaker oats known as Friends oats, which it was in Muscatine, Iowa, before they were purchased by a conglomerate and became worldwide. Friends have an interesting and varied history, of which we are quite proud, and I thank you for the privilege of sharing.
Any other comments? Thank you.
Very
Norman?
interesting. No, I'm just,
It-
very interesting.
It has been a wonderful afternoon, and thank you all very much for coming and sharing the stories of your church and the history. We appreciate it, and we thank everybody for attending. Thank you very much.